Welcome to the program today. Good to have you here, Brian.
Thanks, Simon. Thank you for having me.
I always ask my guests, how did you come to Treasury and what made you choose Treasury as your career?
My first job out of college was with the First National Bank of Chicago, and I was working as a derivative documentation analyst, where I would do all of the confirmations of all the trades and all of the ISDA work behind the scenes. And I happened to have met a couple people from corporates that were on corporate treasury teams that were entering into these trades. And I was asking the people at the bank that were doing the trades, hey, why are these companies doing these trades? I wanted to understand the reason behind it. And so from there, it just came out. I had, many conversations with people in the bank and people and corporate customers. I thought it was kind of interesting and neat to understand that these companies were hedging positions that they had, whether it was in currencies or interest rates. And when I went back to graduate school, that was a focus of mine to kind of look a little bit more in capital markets, a little bit more on this concept of hedging and derivatives and things like that. And I was hired by McDonald's Corporation out of graduate school, and into the Treasury Department. And that's where it started.
So just for the guests, to give them a bit of clarity there, obviously after the bank, you went to McDonald's, where you were in Treasury there for 7 years. You then moved to USG in the building materials for the next 7 years, and progressed through to treasurer at Dover over 3.5 years with them in the industrial product side. And then most recently, you've spent 6 years in technology with McKesson as the treasurer. What would you say, in your mind, have been the career highlights so far?
Yeah, there's been a couple. From a project perspective, I've worked on some pretty cool projects. 2003, I worked on a project called Riverbend with McDonald's, which was all about the turnaround. Back then, same-store sales were declining. The credit rating had gone from AA to single A. The stores were losing relevance with the base customers. And so the Project Riverbend was this initiative to turn around the company, decide what it was going to do to gain relevance and improve the stock price and make the shareholders happy. And so from there, it became the path where it was going to sell off the partner brands, which included Chipotle and Boston Market. It essentially sold Latin American markets to make them developmental licensee, and refreshed all the stores, added technology. And so that was really neat to see from the inception all the way to where it is today, and executed against all of those priorities fantastically. But then I'd say the other thing that have been career highlights have been people that I've worked with that have gone on to do bigger and better things. And so I have colleagues of mine who have all done that, and I take personal happiness and pride in having a little bit in helping some of my friends and colleagues along the way to get to those roles.
And I mean, McDonald's is a bit of a gold standard, isn't it, from a treasury perspective? I know I've spoken to other people that have gone through there, and they very much hold themselves out as wanting to be the gold standard, the first to do certain things in new geographies, etc.
Yeah, I totally got lucky when I was hired by McDonald's, because I did not have an appreciation for the quality of the work that the company did, and certainly the team in Treasury did. I was the treasurer that was there when I was first hired, Tony Pearl, was a member of the group of 30 for the ISDA work, that actually put the first contracts in place. And he had such a fantastic team. I learned from them for years, and I like to think I've kind of stolen some of the good parts of their coaching and their mentorship, and incorporated it in what I do. Have done since then. So
absolutely.
Yeah,
and so
great people.
Have you really tried to have a similar philosophy as you've set up the team at McKesson?
Absolutely. One of one of the big philosophies that the team at McDonald's had was very much a partnership with its banking partners, and the idea was to work with them. They will, if you work with them, they will work with you. You'll have a good relationship. Be smart about what business you give to or have banks compete on. Be thoughtful, be upfront, be transparent. There were other companies that I would see that had different approaches, where every transaction was an absolute jump ball, and whoever gave you the lowest price, for example, got the underwriting for the next bond deal. That certainly is a one way of doing it, but I thought the philosophy of getting the best out of your banks, having them compete on price, but also be fair and transparent upfront, and let them know that it's a long-term partnership, has really served the companies I've worked for very well.
I would imagine you have much better relationships in that approach as well, so that when things are tougher and you really need to draw upon it, you're getting a lot more loyalty, would have been my thoughts.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There was a time, I think back when I was at McDonald's, when we had kind of a one-day critical point cash flow wise in another part of the world, and all we had to do was call up our relationship manager for one of our top banks, and he said, "Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it, and we'll do all the documentation. I'll send you the documentation tonight, tomorrow morning, but don't worry about it. We'll get it taken care of." And you only get that kind of response when you've been a real partner, and that served it incredibly well. And then, I could say last year, when we went through, everyone went through the shockwave of COVID-19 in the capital markets, in those days that were the darkest, I was getting calls proactively from my bankers that were saying, "Hey, what do you need? Do you need liquidity? What are your plans? Is there anything we can do?" And again, I don't think that happens unless you have that good relationship and that open and honest back and forth with them. That they're the ones who are going to call you proactively in case you need something.
And I think like the procurement 101 philosophy of just getting the cheapest price, I totally get it from some businesses, but I know, having been on the other side of that, it's not where you build a relationship. You kind of feel like you're being hard done by all the time, and that it's take, rather than feeling that it's a mutual benefit and a relationship.
You're absolutely right. And look, there are transactions that are, price discovery is easy, and we have policies in place that say that you have to take the best price. If we're going to do an FX trade, you're not going to just hand it off to someone. You're going to have some competitors in the mix there, because that is what your policies state. So that's one thing. There's another thing about talking about what are the different types of transactions, whether it's currencies, or whether it's derivatives, or whether it's leases, and working with those banks to say, where are your strengths? And we're happy to marry up those opportunities with your strengths. And if you don't have a particular focus on an area, that's fine. Tell you what, we'll include you on the next area for something else that you do focus on.
Definitely. How have you found that Treasury differs across industries? Like, you've worked across technology, you've worked across industrial materials, quick service restaurants. Does Treasury differ much across the different areas?
Well, there's a little bit, right? I mean, look, how cash comes in, is a good example. The cash receipts for McDonald's is going to be different than cash receipts for a building materials company, because people are either paying cash or credit card at a register in one example, and the other one, people are buying product on terms. So that's probably the biggest difference, that and ultimately what a cash conversion cycle would look like industry by industry. But the other things, it's very similar blocking and tackling type of issues. and, based on different companies' credit ratings, maybe a little bit different approach to go into capital markets. But I think it's pretty ubiquitous.
Now, Brian, you've moved in and out of Treasury into more broader finance roles to
Yes.
get a broader experience. Talk me through some of those moves and advice for others around, broadening outside of just being a Treasury specific person.
So I think it's paramount for everyone to, whether you're in Treasury or another department, accounting, whatever, sales, get out of your organization and go work in another organization, another, not without leaving companies necessarily, but go get it into another area so that you get a different perspective and just build up your experience base. When I was working for USG in the building materials space, I left to go be the head of finance for a business unit. And there I was doing, budgeting, standard FP&A types of activities, whether it's budgeting, strat plan creation, meeting with customers and talking to customers about them not paying on time, and working with plants and looking at potential closures and things like that. Those were all experiences I never would have had if I would have stayed in Treasury. And so it's something I always encourage people, go do it. You can always come back. And yeah.
What would you say are some of the key learnings or part of that journey that will benefit people?
Well, I think there's a couple, like I talked about, increasing your experience base. You can't look at the whole world through the lens of one particular department, one particular type of function, because you'll always be disconnected. You'll always wonder why something is happening in a business when you don't really understand it. So building the experience base is one. Number two, building your network within a company, and even externally, because you're going to be dealing with whether it's suppliers or customers or other people that that other department might interact with. Building out your network, and building up some internal equity within the company by going to work with others, helping them out, and that's only going to help you be prepared for your next role or whatever your long-term goals are. It's not going to hurt you from going and get a diversified set of experiences.
Brian, you just mentioned networking. What's been your approach to networking and your advice for listeners around networking?
I wish it would have started earlier. That'd be my first thing. The second thing I would say is networking is not a four-letter word, and it's not, as long as you have the right approach. Don't expect something out of every conversation. There are some people that are like that, and I would try to coach them to say, just have a conversation. Go into every conversation trying to learn something. And so my approach has been to call people up, or reach out to them and just say, I'd like to learn more about what you do, and how does it fit within the great scheme of the company perhaps I'm working in, or just I want to learn more about your company or in a different company. And then at the same time, I always try to offer up, if there's ever any way I can be helpful, in a conversation, maybe you're looking for someone who's, had experiences, in, with certain things, and I could be a sounding board, or I can help, steer you in the right direction. I always try to do that so that we're not ending up in a conversation with an absolute list of to-dos. There's nothing. It's just more of getting to know people. And then hopefully over time you can add, just from having those networks alive that you maintain, because it's up to you to keep it up, good things benefit from that.
I think it's, like you're really just saying, building strong relationships, aren't you? A broader set of relationships across, be it your own business or multiple businesses to then benefit down the track, but not take, thinking of how you can help others at the same time.
That's exactly right. And so think of networking as just that, like relationship building. And there's a lot of, literature and studies that have shown that people that have, large, strong, indirect networks are usually more successful, are able to get things done in a more effective way. So, learn from others, and those others that have had stronger networks seem to have had a little bit easier go of it.
Have mentors played a part in your career so far?
Absolutely. There's probably about 3 or 4 people that I kind of refer to as my board of directors, if you will, my own personal board of directors. And I will turn to them for different reasons, usually in advice seeking. Have you ever been in this type of situation? And if so, how did you handle it? Or, have you ever seen something like this? Or, I have an opportunity in my career, this is being presented, how do you view this, knowing my career is as good as it's bad? So absolutely. And it's been very beneficial for me just to have those people give their time just to, have a conversation and give me that perspective.
Brian, you've made it through to the treasurer and CFO roles. What's the one piece of advice you would pass on to listeners that you wish you had have known back at when you were 25 and starting your career that you know now?
That it's much more so about soft skills as it is technical skills. Looking at me personally, I was early on in my career, I was very technically, quantitatively focused, and it served me well. However, I didn't have that appreciation, in terms of what leadership really is it's not about the technical things, but it's how you go about doing things, and how do you influence others, and how do you help others in their career. And so I would say, make sure, focus on the soft skills as well as the hard skills, and then understand that what got you here, right, is not going to get you there. That's that old adage, and that's true, because there might be a lot of people that can do a particular function. It's how they go about doing it. That's the person that that's going to rise above the crowd to be selected to kind of move on to another bigger and better role.
What about when you're hiring? What is it that you look for in your direct reports?
There's a couple of key things. The number one thing I look is demonstration for collaboration. That's the thing I preach the most about in the teams that I've been lucky to be a part of, is that we focus on collaboration, because that requires a lot of skills in one kind of word, which includes empathy and communication skills, and knowing that if you make a mistake or someone else makes a mistake, we do whatever we can collectively to make it better, and we don't point out the errors in a malicious way. I look for people that have success in not only building teams, but seeing others on those teams move on into other bigger and better roles. And I also gravitate, I'm a big believer in coaching, that a leader should also be a good coach. And I gravitate towards those people who have that element in them, that they have the ability and the desire to teach others, whether it's the hard skill or the soft skill. Those are the people that I tend to seek out to fill out positions on my team.
Brian, a question unannounced, but I've had a few people say to me, and you've alluded to this, that they almost actively advise people in their team, if there's a really good job out there for their career, to go out and get it. Is that something that it sounds like that's sort of your philosophy as well? Would I be right?
Yes, and I always encourage people, if that job is a lateral move, take the lateral move, right? Because sometimes, just getting that experience is worth it. If you were to look at, say, what are your, kind of your strengths and weaknesses, and the list of experiences you've had and maybe you haven't had, if you can fill some boxes that are empty on those lists, or you have a unique opportunity that doesn't normally come around, and you go and do it, and it might mean just a lateral move, go do it. And like I said, getting out of Treasury, and you could always come back, go do that, build up at that experience. Others will notice that you are proactive with your own career and your own development in terms of finding those empty boxes on your experience list, or those opportunities for development that you can actually work on and improve. If you've never, an example, if you've never had an opportunity to be a manager of people, and there's an opportunity to go be a manager and go learn what it means to be a direct manager of people. And that's a different set of skills and experiences that no amount of coaching or reading in a book is going to give you outside. You have to go do it.
Brian, what do you think makes a successful treasurer in the eyes of the C-suite?
Like, the main job of the treasurer is to make sure the company has liquidity in all places at all times, wherever the company may be. And so I think the CEO and the CFO and the board want in a treasurer someone who has command of the company's liquidity, that it knows what its needs are, and if you need to get it someplace, how quickly can you get it done? What are the mechanisms? That is what I think the board and senior management would like to know, that the person that's in place there has that down. And it's more than just having experience in the capital markets. That's certainly important, but that's not it. Because if you have to go get euros delivered in a country tomorrow morning unexpectedly, how do you do that? Capital markets is not an answer for that. You have to have planned for this, and then you have to execute against that. So it's multifaceted. It's working with an effective team of people that could get things done when needed.
Brian, what would you say? I mean, technology is changing very quickly. How would you see the role of the treasurer changing in the coming years based on that technology advancement?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of technological advancement in different areas, whether it's payments themselves or the currencies that payments are made in, to having the comprehensive view of everything that's going on liquidity wise in your company. I think technology will continue to be a way to make things a little bit easier, maybe from a management perspective. You're still going to need to have people that are turning the dials, if you will, or running the department. So I think whether it's from a treasurer or a treasury team, it's going to be made up of people that know how to take advantage of the technology that's available to them. And there's plenty of examples that better than me, whether it's treasury workstations or electronic FX trading, are two big examples that have dramatically changed how you do things. But it also reaches over into things like cash pool and netting and things like that. It's those things will continue to be easier to execute. But I heard a good quote. I don't know who said it, but it said, computers can give us all the answers, but it's humans who have all the questions. And you're still going to need people to, look at what's your liquidity profile, what is your planning, in case we have another, pandemic type crisis. What are the mechanisms you have in place, and what are those relationships you have with those banks, so that you can get the right answer in those moments when they get pretty risky.
Brian, it's been a pleasure chatting today. Thank you very much for your time. I've really enjoyed it and look forward to chatting to you in the future.
Thanks again, Simon.